Tonight, a state of emergency has been declared in Ferguson, Missouri, and the National Guard preparing to move in. This is a grand jury decision set to be announced in the police-related death of 18-year-old Michael Brown any day now. Currently, there is no date set for the release of that grand jury's decision. Jurors are deciding whether Officer Wilson, the man accused of fatally shooting Michael Brown, should face criminal charges. Now, opponents argue that the grand jury, which is made up of 9 whites and 3 blacks, does not reflect Ferguson's racial population. Jury, they've been allowed to call witnesses and issue subpoenas, and jurors have also been allowed to view pictures, forensic evidence, medical reports in the case. Officer Wilson was also allowed to testify, and surprising some, he did so, and again, without legal counsel there, and he testified for 4 hours. Jurors at the end have to determine probable cause here to bring criminal charges brought against him, and Wilson could face here a number of different crimes, including second-degree manslaughter, which is defined as knowingly causing the death, important the word knowingly, of another person, and it comes with a penalty of 10 to 30 years in prison. Voluntary manslaughter, defined as causing a death under the influence of sudden passion arising from adequate cause, and that's got a penalty between 5 and 15. Involuntary manslaughter in the first degree, which can mean recklessly causing a death with a penalty of up to 7 years, and involuntary manslaughter in the second degree, which is defined as acting with criminal negligence to cause a death, and that comes with a maximum penalty of 4 years in prison. And Jimmy, just explain the math. We said there's 12 jurors here, but it's not that they all have to agree. How does it work for a grand jury?
9 need to agree in order to vote to indict.
Okay. Now, what was a little bit unusual, I know not unprecedented, but a little bit unusual is, I think the general public's got this idea that, okay, the prosecutor, when he's going there in front of the case here, he's going to lay out his case as to where he wants the grand jury to come back. And we, the public, are under this impression that, you know, you can indict a ham sandwich, that if the prosecutor wants it, he or she can lay out a case to get what they want. Prosecutor intentionally decided in this case to lay out both sides, basically give all the facts, throw everything at the grand jury, and then make them decide where they wanted to go with a whole host of it. To a lot of folks, Bill, that screamed, this guy's kind of abdicating his responsibility. He wants this thing both ways. He's getting a little cover here. Again, not unprecedented, but still atypical.
Well, he's in a lose-lose situation, because if he doesn't present both sides, then he's going to be accused of sort of telling the grand jury to indict, encouraging them to indict. On the other hand, if he presents both sides, then people say, well, he's abdicating his responsibility. Look, as far as I was concerned, if I was the prosecutor, I would do exactly what this prosecutor's doing. I'm going to present every piece of evidence that I know of to the grand jury so that I cannot be accused of being partial and trying to lead them a certain direction. Let the grand jury hear all of the information, all of the witnesses, all of the evidence, forensic and otherwise. And then I will instruct the grand jury, as I'm required to do, on what the law requires in order for them to vote an indictment. And after the grand jury applies the legal instructions to the evidence that they find to have been presented, then that's going to give them the roadmap to whatever decision they need to make.
I hear him, but Jimmy, prosecutors always, not always, but the vast majority of times, they go into the grand jury and they tell them what they think, right?
I understand exactly what Bill is talking about in terms of being in a lose-lose position. I don't think he necessarily needed to be in a lose-lose situation. I think it's legal. I'm pretty sure it's legal in Missouri that he could have proceeded by way of filing a complaint and then doing a preliminary hearing.
Explain how that works.
Okay. What that means is you file a complaint, and in order to proceed with felony charges, probable cause determination has to be made either by a grand jury or at a preliminary hearing with a judge. If you do it with a judge at a preliminary hearing, you solve the secrecy problems, you solve the mistrust problems. The family's lawyers will be more than happy to give you their witnesses, let them testify, and you don't have the mistrust issues. And a judge is going to control the evidence. Look, a DA has the responsibility, it's what we elect them for, to look at a case, look at the evidence, and make a determination as to whether a person should or should not be indicted. Then they proceed either with a preliminary hearing or a grand jury. What if this case shouldn't have been indicted? What if this officer should not have faced charges because the evidence viewed by a responsible district attorney indicated he shouldn't? He should not put it into the grand jury. I'm not saying that once he makes the decision to indict for certain crimes, a more open-ended presentation is a bad idea. It's a good idea in this case. but he has that initial responsibility to determine based on the evidence he has. He's presenting evidence while it comes in, as it comes in.
I take issue with my good friend here. First off, can you imagine what the public reaction would have been if a white prosecutor decided not to put the case before a grand jury and instead have a preliminary hearing before presumably a white judge, and then have the white judge determine whether there was probable cause? The outcry would have been this case should have been presented to a grand jury, so the citizen...
Counselor, it would be almost as bad as it is now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
It would, be public
It would
and
be as
open-
bad as it is
Yes.
now.
Public
Yep.
and open for people to see.
You guys are the lawyers, but
Yeah.
let me just ask you a quick question. Why do you think people of color are protesting and in some cases resorting to violence in Missouri? Why do you think they're doing that?
Well, I think because Ferguson has a history of basically having these types of racial problems. Even though I think it's 67% black, I think.
But so they can return a vote of no indictment without a single black vote from this grand jury. Am I
well,
correct?
yes,
Yes.
you can. If
So that
six-
doesn't tell you the fix is in.
No,
That
no,
doesn't
no,
tell you the
no.
fix is
Dominic,
in.
with all due respect, no.
They can return. They put 3 blacks on the grand jury, but they only need 9 decisions
And
to make it. So they
historically-
can come back and say we put you black people on the grand jury, but still no indictment.
I don't know how-
Historically, minorities are underrepresented, and I understand what you're saying, and that's why I'm saying in a situation like this, white judge, black judge, put it out there, let the public see the
prosecutor
testimony.
should not be on this case.
Well,
I noticed the segment for
or-
these guys. He should not be on this case.
I agree. Assign a special prosecutor, perhaps move for a
Now,
change of
now
venue.
this doesn't happen in a vacuum. We got a case going on in Staten Island, right? And we're probably weeks, maybe longer.
Dan
None of us,
Donovan.
right? We're not sure of this. How this is being handled, right or wrong, with the National Guards being brought in here, certainly we're creating an expectation that there's going to be problems, whatever comes down. I still understand why they got of the jury makeup. You know, there's already, you can see it right here, right? There's already a feeling that, we're getting a raw deal. Why you only have, it's not representative of the population, I think is a fair question. But
Richard,
anyway.
we don't know why there are only 3 blacks on the grand jury.
See,
Come on,
see,
Richard.
listen,
Come
I'm
on.
not telling you what to say or not. I
Come
don't
on.
believe, I would like to think there is not a fix that's in here, because what's going to be, think about the consequence, okay? Do you think anybody doesn't think if they come back with nothing, there's not going to be big problems?
I really believe, and I believe, forget what I believe, the people in the Missouri community believe this prosecutor doesn't care what they think.
See,
This prosecutor...
This is the danger.
Thi-
This didn't have to be this way. They could have created a jury pool where there was at least a mix that's representative of it. If 2/3 of the population of Missouri is black, right? Have 50-50 or something.
But in fairness, Rich, they don't handpick the grand jurors. The grand jurors are called in. It's supposed to, what you're suggesting is criminal conduct. Okay, grand
And I
jurors.
stand by it.
You get grand jury notices. The grand jurors report, and they are randomly picked, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, what you're suggesting is that
Yeah.
what this prosecutor did was he purposefully
Stacked the
and
deck.
criminally stacked the deck. What I'm saying to you is that, and I was reading about it today, in Missouri, minorities are underrepresented. That
Okay,
has
but
to do
gentlemen,
with.
Gentlemen, but the year is 2014, right? And this case can be decided without a single black vote. You don't think there's something wrong with that?
no.
The grand jury process.
Yes, the grand jury
They can
process-
get
yeah, but-
9 whites to say we don't believe this officer
We don't
did
have the
anything
time
wrong,
to discuss our
and
problems
then
with
it's
the
over
grand
and
jury
done.
process.
No, but Dominic, understand that the grand jury is simply an initial step. If the grand jury indicts,
If it doesn't indict,
not
if it doesn't indict, the officer goes on about his business.
that's exactly right. But if they
Right,
do
that's
indict,
all that counts.
okay,
but they're not going to indict.
But
Why do you think the National Guard is mobilizing?
Oh,
They're not
the
going to indict.
Because regardless of what the grand jury does, you're going to need the National Guard because it's a political power keg that's going to explode. If the grand jury
Yeah.
indicts, there'll be a reaction. If the grand
But
jury
wait,
doesn't indict,
if they
there'll be a
indict,
reaction.
why would there be riots? If they indict, there's not going to be any violence.
But
if
wait
they
a second.
indict.
If they don't indict
They
for
don't
murder?
know. They don't know right now what they're going to do. It's not like I think the governor knows the decision. We both agree it'd be irresponsible. I don't know if he had to as publicly telegraph the thing as much as he had, or he could have gotten mobilized a little bit beforehand. First of all, I also don't know why they didn't release it like they had planned to on the weekend, all right, on a Sunday or something. Now he's going to do it in the middle of the work week here. This thing's been mishandled from the police response here. I won't even get into what happened because we don't know exactly what happened that day. It's been so mishandled. The country will now be watching in Technicolor because the whole thing's been built up. I'm sure there'll be assault vehicles, whatever, lined in the streets of Ferguson. You got all these professional protesters coming out of town here to further inflame the situation. And now, what I'm saying is, we've got coming on the heels of this is a situation going on in Utah right now. The situation is going to be going on Staten Island very shortly. This is coming all to the fore, and I think the public's going to get an education on how the process works or doesn't work. I don't know. I hope for the best, but you fear for the worst. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. I know we'll be talking later on in the week. We got a little bit of time after the break here. Jeannie can't stop talking here. So when we come back, we will talk some politics. Stay with us. We'll be right back.